1 second, please. All right, welcome everybody to today's presentation, Leadership and Self-Management in the Season of Disruption with Jeffrey Yergler. Jeff is an associate professor of management and the department chair of Golden Gate University in San Francisco. As an instructor in higher education, Jeff specializes in local, national, and global leadership, management, diversity in organizations, emotional intelligence and agility, coaching and mentorship, and human skills development. Alongside with his work as a professor, Jeff has also served as the principal for Integrated Leadership Consulting since 2004. And with that, Jeff, please take it away.
Take it away. Good morning, everybody. And Priscilla, thank you for that marvelous introduction. A generous introduction, I should say. So welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're here. This is the second time I'm giving this webinar. And the first time was very exciting, a lot of good conversation, strong turnout. And today's conversation will be obviously along the same lines, but I really hope that as we go through the session this morning, that you'll be thinking about questions that you want to ask toward the end of the webinar. So we're going to go about 45 minutes or so, 40 minutes, and then I'll turn it back over to Priscilla, who will then kind of coordinate the Q&A, okay? So my hope for our time together is for you to really just gain some understanding and maybe some perspective. At the end of the day, probably not much that you're going to hear is going to be new, but it may be unique in the way that it's framed up, all right? So that's what I hope you'll experience. I look forward to your questions, look forward to our collective learning. And again, thanks to GGU for putting this on and Priscilla for making this possible. So welcome everybody. Let's go ahead and get into it. And we'll start right away. Let me go ahead and, here we go. Okay, leadership and self-management in a season of disruption. Why are those two themes really important? Because in seasons of disruption, or when we go through experiences that are disruptive, they have a way of altering the way we lead, the way we are in relationship, the way we're in conversation with each other. It changes the way that we take care of ourselves or take care of ourselves in less effective ways. So disruption really can have a broad impact on the way we see ourselves and the way we see others. And in this COVID-19 season, which, you know, who knows where it's going to go. We hear that the curve is flattening here in California. Good news. Other places not so. We're hearing that the rate of infection is going down, but we could hear that it could go right back up quickly if we're not careful. So really don't know what to expect. And that expecting the unexpected sense of anxiety does a lot to change the way we just navigate every day. I mean, think about it for a moment as we begin this conversation. I'd like you just to reflect on an experience you've been through that as you look at it now, it may be in the past, distant past, maybe in the recent past, or maybe something you're going through right now. An experience of life that's having a profound impact on you. And it is becoming disruptive to the point, could be the COVID-19 experience, which it is for many. The experience that it's having on you is to confuse the way you think about what you do and how you respond. What can you expect? How do you behave? Normal routines are changed, they're disrupted. And when our normal routines are disrupted, when they're changed and we don't know what to expect, we can't see what's coming, that all adds up to some turmoil, chaos, and struggle. It does. I see it in myself, I see it in my colleagues, I see it in my own family. I've studied it for years, and those experiences that are watershed moments, maybe some less so, can derail us in so many ways, and we can also learn from it. So that's kind of where we're moving today. We're going to have a brief time together. It's not like we have an 8-week term or 7.5-week term or 15 weeks. This is like 40 minutes, 35 minutes, and we're not going to have very much time. But let's get this conversation focus in such a way that we can begin to gain some insight on what it means to lead differently and manage differently, to work in our organizations differently in a season of disruption, because we have to learn how to do that. So some of the goals and outcomes for today, we want to just get to know each other. Hard to do in a virtual environment, but we're learning, aren't we? Zoom. I wish I had bought some stock in Zoom. Goodness sakes. Who would have known? I mean, before COVID-19, you ask anybody about Zoom and they kind of go, what? Zoom what? Now, everybody knows Zoom. So thank God for Zoom. And the way it's just built a virtual platform where we can connect like this. I mean, this is amazing. So we want to build some connections as best we can in this virtual environment in the limited time we have. We want to be able to focus on how this conversation can fuel our professional development. Our ongoing growth, basically, is what it means. And it's growth in two areas: what we know, the mind, and certainly our heart. And that's really taking care of ourselves, right? So how do I continue to grow as a professional at such a time as this? Gaining knowledge and some self-care insights, and maybe some care insights that I can extend to family and friends. We want to be able to understand just the importance of investing, no matter what season it is. So we're home, we're sheltering in place, at least we should be. I do that pretty well for the most part, sometimes not. But I want to continue to invest in my own growth, no matter what. If I'm here, if I'm somewhere else, and no matter where I'm planted, no matter where I'm sheltering, I want to be able to invest in my professional growth. And so may this be an opportunity for you to do the same thing. We also want to focus on our well-being. A lot of attention has been given over the years, maybe the last 15 especially, about what it means to take care of our well-being, right? To be resilient, growing in our capacity to be able to navigate circumstances. I want to be a person who is aware of my well-being, what it takes to maintain my well-being. I want to be a resilient human being. And so much of that just has to do with being aware and being able to understand what I'm going through to such extent that I'm able to navigate it effectively. Maybe not every day, but I want to be able to gain enough insight that I can bring some wisdom into my own journey. So we want to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, that we can thrive in any circumstance. Maybe this one is another opportunity. And then we want to think about our larger organizations. I know right now I'm thinking about Golden Gate University. That's where I serve as a faculty member. I see one of my colleagues there, Walt. There are probably others that I don't see that are zoomed in today. So how does this season of disruption impact the way I interact with my colleagues, the way I get my work done at the university, or off the university? It's not at the university anymore. It's away from the university. So this changes all the rules. On one hand, on the other hand, it doesn't change much at all. So I want to be able to know how to be in a relationship, for example, with my colleague Walt, who is a faculty colleague in undergraduate studies. I want to be able to interact with him. I want to be able to understand him, connect with him, even though we don't see each other, except on Zoom. Walt, you're looking good today. Thanks for tuning in. So what I go through personally in this environment, in terms of a season of disruption, really does change the way that I interact with my university, that whole organization. So what does it mean? How do I do that? How do I understand all the anxiety and stress that people in the organization feel at any given time that I encounter? So just want to be aware of that. Because when we all go through our individual experiences of change and disruption, like we are now, guess what? It's not just contained within us. It could be. It could be just related to Jeff. It is always. So anything I go through is going to be experienced by me because it's my experience. But what I experience can be so disruptive that I extend my anxiety and my stress, for example, to Walt. He feels it. When I get near him in conversation, he experiences that. So I want to be able to moderate myself. I want to be able to understand what I'm projecting and how to mitigate that, how to moderate that. If I'm anxious, if I'm uptight, if I'm stressed in my own world, my inner world, then guess what? In a world, outer world, I may be able to control some of that, but by and large, my outer world is going to be experiencing that same level of anxiety and stress and fear. You're going to feel it when you're around me. You're going to hear it when you're around me. You're going to sense something around me because that's what I'm projecting. So we want to make sure that in our organizations, when we're going through disruptive experiences, that we're also aware of not projecting that anxiety, not projecting that fear onto others, and injecting anxiety and fear into our organizational systems as well. Okay, so those are some of the goals and the outcomes. Let's get into it in terms of how disruption impacts the human being. Years ago, when I was doing my, well, it wasn't years ago, I was a late bloomer, but when I was doing my Ph.D. research, 2005, 2006, 2007, let me tell you about my dissertation. Now, I'm not going to do that. I won't do that to you, but I will tell you that it was fascinating because what I studied was how involuntary job loss for senior executives was a psychologically traumatic experience. Fascinating. So studied 5 professionals, all C-suite leaders, 3 men, 2 women. And it was amazing to me how their loss of a job turned their world upside down. I mean, we know that, right? That's what job loss does. And what, for 23.5 million people right now? In the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, think about that. You want to talk about psychological trauma? Think about that. 23.5 or 24 million unemployed in the last 4.5 weeks or so. Folks, I don't know if you've ever been involuntarily terminated. You lost your job. You've been riffed. Probably some of you have. You're on right now. You're thinking about this. It can be the most psychologically traumatic experience you'll ever go through. You go from good income to no income, strong safety net to very little safety net. So it's a traumatizing experience. So with these women and men that I studied, absolutely. Didn't matter how much money they made, how much wealth they had accumulated. Many of them were all undone by the experience of job loss. So what I discovered as I dug deeper, excuse me, is that fundamentally, at a deep core level, we thrive both consciously and unconsciously on what? Stability, order, being able to predict what's coming at us. The more consistency we can establish in our lives, the better. Not only is it better, but if I know that I can somewhat foresee what's coming my way, what I can expect every day, what's going to happen every day, more or less, that kind of builds a structure for me that then allows me to navigate. All right. And that's important to know. We're going to get into a topic here in just a minute, hit it briefly, called cognitive schemas, and how cognitive schemas really do provide that inner guidance system that we all need. So all of you who have tuned in today, you are operating with a set of rules and guidelines that guide your thinking, guide what you expect, guide what you're expecting from the Zoom conversation right now. Kind of guiding what you expect on any given day. You don't even think about it, but your world is going to be okay if what you experience falls in line with what your brain tells you you should expect. So on any given day, if I make it through the day and I can say, things happen today, they were not all pleasant, some things were hard, but by and large, they fall into the realm of what's possible. That is predictability, that's order, that's stability. That gives me a sense of, I can rest and relax here. It's okay. That sense of well-being, that I know what's coming my way, makes a huge difference every day. Huge difference every day. So why this huge difference? In our cognitive schemas, this is an area of psychological study and research that basically, there's been so much written about it. Believe me, I won't bore you with it, but just let me give you some of the highlights here. A cognitive schema basically is the grid in your brain. It's the ghost in the machine, if you will. Not even aware of it. You're not, it's not something you think about every day. I don't think about it every day. I think about it hardly at all. But the cognitive schema, my map, my grid, if you will, is operating 24/7. And that information in that grid, it's kind of like a map, right? My internal map in my head basically helps me to navigate and cope every single day. And within that map, there's information that says, this is what you expect, this is what should happen, this is what you'll see, this is what you won't see, this is good, this is not good, this is threatening, this is non-threatening, and so on and so forth. All day long, our map, our cognitive schema is informing us about what we should experience and what we should expect. Now, the interesting thing about a cognitive schema is that all the information that's in that schema has been put there, placed there from years of experience. Years of experience, data goes in, which allows you to process, which allows you to be relatively stable. The thing about a cognitive schema is that when it works well for you, your life feels like it's in order. Your life feels like it's okay. There's not too much threatening. There's nothing really causing you major stress. But how can you tell when your cognitive schema begins to break down? Well, here's what happens. When information tries to go in to your schema, when new experiences you encounter on any given day begin to say to your schema, look, you don't have all the information. This is information and this is an experience that I'm going through that there's no way to interpret it. There's no way to predict it. There's no way to prepare for it. That's when your cognitive schema can begin to become undone. And when your schema begins to unravel, how do you know this? What are some of the signs? Well, there are many, many signs, a lot of indicators. You don't know how to function. Simple tasks now are not so simple. You don't trust anybody. I mean, think about the women and men who come back from the theater of war suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. What is that exactly? Well, in just simple parlance, it's when what they experience in the field of battle so disrupts their thinking about the way life should be, or what to expect every day. When they go through an experience that just totally undoes information in their schema, what they should expect, you got to rebuild that. You've got to take time to rebuild that schema, which takes a lot of therapy, a lot of counseling. That's what post-traumatic stress is. Fundamentally at its heart, new information that you experience that completely does not register. You thought the world was safe. It's not safe. You thought the person next to you would not be killed. The person next to you got killed. You thought you'd never lose your job after getting your Ph.D. Well, guess what? You lose your job after getting your Ph.D. You thought you'd never go through this experience or that experience. And guess what? You do. Now you don't know how to navigate. Now you do not know how to cope. And now you have to begin to rebuild that part of your thinking that will allow you to at least function. Again, it takes time. And if you've known someone who's gone through a psychologically traumatic experience, could be anything, but it was disruptive to them, then you're going to see firsthand. And I would imagine that probably some of you here today really have gone through that experience as well. A traumatic experience that just had to reshape the way you see the world, the way you experience relationships, the way you trust or don't trust, the way you see yourself, the rules or the values of life that you're going to have to operate with now that you never had to operate with before. Gone. You have to learn a new way to do that. So a cognitive schema is the map that sometimes, because of outside experiences, has to be redrawn, has to be redesigned in many respects. So how do we do that? Well, there's some things to keep in mind. And here's what we want to talk about is just how do we do that? How do we manage the disruption? We know it's there. We know we experience it every day in different ways, but how do we find a way forward when what we've come to know, think cognitive schema, what we've come to know over the years no longer applies? Now, the COVID-19 it's not mild. but relatively speaking, it's a disruptor. And there have been other disruptors over the years, some more significant than others. Those that have lost a loved one to COVID-19. Talk about trauma, talk about disruption. There's nothing greater. So the cost of this has been huge. The 23.5 million people who've lost jobs, 24.4 million, excuse me, that have lost jobs have know well now what it is to be learning to navigate all over again in this very difficult time. So what does disruption do to our cognitive schema? Just quickly. Back in the end of the Cold War, the U.S. Army War College, in trying to think through how it was going to prepare soldiers for battle, realized that they were dealing with new rules of the game, new rules of warfare. And what they came up with was an acronym that I'm sure many of you have heard about at some point. If you haven't, I'm pleased to introduce this to you. The acronym that the Army War College came up with was called VUCA, V-U-C-A. And you'll see here that VUCA is an acronym that stands for volatility, excuse me, disruption, complexity, and ambiguity. Now think about it. Those 4 words describe perfectly well what you can expect if you're heading into an unknown situation, right? Like we are now with COVID-19. We have been, we probably will continue to go through that. So what is it? How does it kind of play out? Well, volatility, there's no stability, means there's no stability, very little stability. I was talking with my wife this morning on Zoom, of course, and she's not in the house here. She's at another location. So we were chatting and she just looked a little stressed. And so, I think I know what's going on. I know her. And I said, how are you doing with all of this chaos? She said, I'm just kind of feeling overwhelmed today. She just talked a bit about that, but it is a volatile experience for her, just every day trying to navigate the unknown. So there's volatility, up, down, left, right, left, right. You don't know what to expect. You do know what to expect. It changes. The rules of the game change every day. This is absolutely amazing. So we got volatility. We've got disruption. We've talked about that. We've got complexity. Who in the world understands this? We don't even have a vaccine. We got the antibody track going. All kinds of different routes to try to solve this. It's not there. Complex? Absolutely. Absolutely. And then ambiguity. I love that word ambiguity because it really gets at the nub of what we're talking about today with this disruption in cognitive schemas. If you're in an ambiguous situation, what are you in? For me, I just have no clue what's coming my way. It's just ambiguous. I don't get it. I can't get all the data I need. Missing information. So when these 4 words combine, it does so much to shake and move the tectonic plates of stability that we've built our life on. It just does. Change and disruption will always have that impact on us. And it's not that we're going to be undone the next time it hits us. We simply want to know what to expect. And what we can expect is VUCA. That's the point I want to make here. The days of stability, continuity, smoothness, a lifetime of expecting and getting what you thought you would get and what you expected to get, probably gone. We're not going back to the days of yore when things were settled, clear. We knew what was coming. It's not going to happen. I wish I had better news for you. I mean, I could be wrong, but it's probably not going to happen. So what can we expect? Well, what we can expect is that we expect VUCA. That's what we live with every day. And I need to be able to find a place in that VUCA environment to be able to look around and feel okay, that my well-being is not threatened, that I can handle this, that I can navigate this, that I can at least understand what's right in front of me. One of my, I think, Priscilla, you were talking about this earlier during the introduction. excuse me, one of my clients in my consulting, leadership consulting work is the Department of Defense. Well, you would know this, we talk about it often. The Department of Defense, and in particular, I do a fair amount of leadership training for the Navy's naval shipyards on the West Coast. And the training that I do is for the senior most leaders of that organization. These would be civilian leaders. In Navy parlance or DoD parlance, they would be your GS-14s, your GS-15s, top of the pay grade, been there 25 years. They know a lot, right? And it's intimidating to get into a class of 25 or 30 and begin to tell them and share with them and lead them in conversation around topics that they know a lot about, way more than me, probably in many respects. The last 3 years that I've been working with the Navy and their senior leadership training, at least at one of the shipyards up in Seattle and down in San Diego, the number one topic that they've wanted, that the DoD has said needs to be in the boilerplate of that training, is this: VUCA. VUCA. Not how to rebuild Trident nuclear submarines or aircraft carriers or boats or ships. They know how to do that. They said to me, when you train our GS-14s and 15s, the brightest and the best of the US Navy, civilian leaders, we want you to prepare them for the unexpected. We want you to be able to talk about what it means for them to be able to prepare their workforce for what they've never encountered before, to be able to respond quickly, to be nimble, to operate in this ambiguous environment and still be effective. That's the Navy's number one training goal for their senior leaders in their organization. Fascinating to me. So clearly this disruptive, unpredictable environment that we're in is really kind of moving into every aspect of what we experience every day, certainly is in mine and the training that I'm doing with the people that I work with, at least in that environment. We talked about the disruption that's going on with many, many people. Certainly the unemployment Gallup on April 15th noted that 8 in 10 US women and men are experiencing significant disruption. 8 out of 10. Well, that was April 15th. Today's the 24th. It's probably 9 in 10 now, maybe 10 out of 10. What does that tell you? If Gallup, who does a great job of researching, gathering data, if Gallup's telling us 80% of the people are going through major disruption, are experiencing significant volatility and ambiguity, do you think that rises the tide of collective anxiety and stress? Do you think that has a way of impacting people's daily behavior? Absolutely it does. So this is all to tell you that there's good reason to be struggling right now. There's a good reason to be asking questions about, how do I navigate this? How do I survive this? What are the resources available to me to begin to move in that direction of finding new ways to cope? Okay, what's disruption's impact on the well-being of the human being? Well, there are many. There are reams of research that tell us that disruption, change of any kind, raises anxiety and stress and impacts our ability to cope and navigate. So as we think about, on one hand, the disruption that's caused by, right now, COVID-19, but many other experiences that we go through in life. And when we get a sense of our anxiety that's linked to the unknown, meaning we're not prepared for this. No one told us about this. There wasn't a COVID-19 350 class. There wasn't a workshop, a seminar on this or any other disruption that's totally turned our lives upside down. So when we're here, what can we do to begin to make sense of I get it. I'm beginning to understand that my anxiety that I bring to Walt every day at the university, my stress internally, my ability to not cope, that bringing that to Walt, just that experience of him being a colleague of mine, really is something that I can control that I need to be aware of. So here are some practical steps just in thinking about, okay, so we got COVID-19, we got disruption, we got it left, right, upside down. You look at it any way you want. What are the resources? How do we find tools to begin to move forward? We can be paralyzed, of course, and many people are. When there's VUCA around them, when cognitive schemas are called into question, we hit the panic button. Oftentimes we'll get paralyzed. We just stop. We become so afraid that we can't do much of anything. So in order to not avoid that, at least see it coming, what are some things that we can do right now to at least begin to get settled? Because getting settled is really going to be key to be able to take the next step forward. Number one, just some practical thoughts here. Many of you are probably already doing this sense of mindfulness and personal reflection. I think you can do that anywhere, but mindfulness to me has always been cognitive awareness of what I'm feeling, being in touch with what I'm experiencing. It's being able to have those conversations with myself and others that really help me reflect on what I'm going through and where I'm at. It's not so much focused on others. It's really bringing my sense of self to this conversation. That could be breathing exercises, could be walks, could be journaling, could be sitting by the lake, climbing, hiking, in other words, whatever you need to do to get that sense of presence of mind, to just be in touch with yourself and what you're thinking and what you're feeling. That's really, really crucial. And I think too, as we become mindful and aware, that can lessen our anxiety and stress because we have a sense of not being sabotaged by what we feel, but understanding it better. And when we can understand it a little bit better, it doesn't take all the disruption and the uncomfortability away from us, but it does help us to be able to rest and relax a bit more in the midst of it, right? So let's make sure that we're spending time in reflection, being mindful, aware, and not feeling overwhelmed. We can't. That's certainly true. But I want to slow down long enough to even stop and really get in touch with that. Stay in touch with that. Might not understand it, but being able to be mindful is huge in the midst of the storm right now, not later, now. Okay, a second thought would be understanding and moderating your own anxiety and fear and not expecting from our environment what it cannot deliver. That's just a simple way to put it. Don't expect what your environment can give you. Don't expect from others what they can give you. Because you're going to be disappointed. You're going to be derailed. You're going to be disrupted, right? I mean, we do that to ourselves. I do that to myself all the time. So what does it mean to understand and moderate my anxiety? By letting go of the need to know. And especially now, being able to live every day in this very fluid environment really means saying to myself in kind of that mindful period, look, Jeff, all bets are off. You have no idea what's coming. Got to be okay with that. VUCA world, got to be okay with that. Prepare as much as you can, but be okay with not preparing the way you used to because the rules have changed. So that sense of moderating my own anxiety and fear really is important. And a lot of that has to do with being in touch with what I can expect and what no longer is going to really deliver what I always thought it would over the years. The rules are changing, and that's got to be okay. We have to be able to look at this environment around us and say, don't get it, don't understand it, dangerous, fluid, unpredictable, not safe. That's okay. That's okay. All right, third thought here would be integrate information from what may be a new normal. We've been hearing that for a number of weeks now, right? New normal, new normal. There's always a new normal. It just simply says, when the new begins to crash in, or the unknown, we're going to be far better served if we're able to look at it embrace it, and try to understand it. Then compared to putting our head in the sand or just walking away and saying, nope, not gonna, no, I don't want to hear it, don't want to see it, don't want anybody to talk to me about it, just all bets are off, leave me alone. Can't do that. The new normal means that, and if we're going to be healthy, if we're going to take care of our well-being, the new normal means that we have to be able to embrace the data, the information that's coming from the new normal, and understand that. Okay, here's another thought too. We want to be able to connect and share honestly and transparently with others who themselves are working to adjust. That's why I said earlier, and I'll say it again right now, this Zoom platform, amazing. Because even though we're not in the same room together, I can see Walt, I can see, at least on my screen, Susanna, I can see Sharon, I see a few others there. But I can see you, you can see me, and there's a sense of connecting there. It's better than nothing. So we can connect, we can understand, we can sense of, there's Susanna, hey Walt, there's Sharon. And that sense of community really does encourage me to not feel alone, to feel like I'm in a company of others that really understand this and are working hard to navigate it themselves, this environment that we're certainly experiencing. So being able to connect helps me to be honest, to be more transparent, to say to you, look, I've got a Ph.D. You kidding me? But I don't know what the hell's going on. That's the reality of it. I'm a smart guy. I'm an associate professor at Golden Gate University, School of Undergraduate Studies, and I have no clue what's coming my way. This is craziness. No one prepared me for this. I feel vulnerable. I feel a bit exposed. Feel like I should know this, but I don't. So I can say that to Walt. Suzanne, I can say it to you. Sharon, I can share it with you and feel like that's okay. And talking about that, whether it's with close friends or colleagues, guess what it does to me? Helps me to feel like I can breathe a bit. And I can get the perspective of my colleagues and my friends who can say, Jeff, I understand that because I'm going through the same thing or much the same. And I can say, really? You're going through that as well? Tell me more about how you're navigating that. And off we go. A marvelous experience. The gift of community and connecting. When you're struggling, especially when you're going through kind of a larger disruption like this, we need to be able to talk. Find ways to do that. Find ways to connect. It may not be perfect, but make the effort to extend yourself to others and build some conversation. Be willing to take some risks and share what you're thinking and what you're feeling, what you don't know. And my hunch is that you're going to find in that strength and great value. Okay, just a couple more thoughts here. In terms of how we cope in organizations, Professor Ronald Heifetz, who's at the Kennedy School of Studies, Harvard, I think he's at Harvard, developed a concept of leading called adaptive leadership. And adaptive leadership, it's one of many theories of leadership, but it's one over the years that Heifetz developed as a way of responding to disruption and struggle and change in organization. Basically means this: when you lead adaptively, you're helping people adjust and respond to the change. You're leaning into them saying, I know this is hard. We're going to get through this together. It's going to be a struggle. We don't know where we're going to end up, but I want to hear what you've got to say. I need your ideas. I want us to work together collaboratively to find some good options to go forward. Leading adaptively means you necessarily include the people that you've led, and now you're working together to find solutions to challenging situations. I know in many organizations, including my own, when there's change, when there's disruption, people tend to do what? If you're working in an organization that thrives on stability, tradition, when it thrives on, this is the way we've always done it. The best way to raise anxiety is to change the rules of the game. And many of you are going through that. We are at the university. And when you are leading a team of people, no matter how big that is, or a department or an organization. And there is major resistance to doing things differently for whatever reason. An adaptive leader finds a way to not say, look, you people need to get on board. You need to find solutions, commit to what we're doing, or you need to take a hike. You're good people, but figure it out. You need to make this work. An adaptive leader says, this is hard, this is not easy, this is a struggle for the organization. We have to change. We're going to have to. Man, I'm not sure I really want to change, but if we're going to succeed, and if we're going to even survive, then we need to be able to look at this together and come up with solutions here. And my perspective so far is that there's not many good solutions, and I need you to think with me. This is going to be hard. We're going to be going through some struggles as an organization. Not going to be easy. But I need you to get on board. I need you to be in the middle of this with me. Help me find solutions. Bring your ideas to the table. We may lose some folks. We may downsize. We may upsize. But this is where we are. And the best way that I know to move forward with all of you is that we're talking together about how to navigate this really, really difficult situation together. I'm the leader, but I don't have nearly all the answers by any stretch of the imagination. And this is hard for me as well. An adaptive leader really gets that. Instead of saying, look, the way I've always led is going to succeed in this time as well, in this time of stress and major VUCA impact, that doesn't work. An adaptive leader really says, we're in this together, let's collaborate, let's find a way in the face of change, when structures are in flux, when we're dealing with turbulence, let's find a way to work on this together. And let's find a way to acknowledge that there are going to be hard times. They're upon us now. And we just have to get through it together. Some of you may not want to be a part of that. That's okay. But for the time being, I need all of you in the middle of this. And as a leader, as a manager, my intent is to make that happen for all of us, to help make that happen. So you're going to want to read more on adaptive leadership because it's huge and it's so important to so much of what is happening right now in our organizations. I know at the university, I deal with a number of adjuncts, excuse me, many of whom are stressed, as you can imagine. And so just working with them when I need to talk about issues of stability and how they can be effective in the classroom is really, really ongoing. Not to say to them, look, you need to figure out how to teach this class. You should know better. You're a person of resources and intelligence. You can make this work. Rather, we're in a season where I need to really provide as much support as I can all the time. And that's a tall task. But I know that when we are working together on these difficult situations in a season like this, when we're building community and conversation, it makes a huge difference. Okay. All right. Just a couple more thoughts here. How does this time of leading and managing in this VUCA environment, seeding disruption, how does it look? What do we do differently? Well, you can just see some items there on the PowerPoint slide that really are going to give you some good thoughts about how you can move forward as a manager, as a leader, using less power, much more collaboration. But these are just some ideas that I want you to ponder. We're about out of time here, so we don't have time to go through all of them. But simply to say, on this list of items on the PowerPoint slide, there's some really great insights on how we take traditional ways of leading, traditional ways of managing that might be more power-based, more directive, and to change that into much more of an encouraging aspect of who we are and how we work with others. Okay, just a few more thoughts here. Let's keep an open mind. Recognize the opportunities around us as opportunities to grow. As leaders and managers in our organizations, we have to do things differently. So let's get accustomed to feeling uncomfortable and learning through that. New mindsets, growth mindset, according to Carol Dweck, as opposed to a limited mindset. Opening ourselves up as leaders and managers in our organizations and saying, what's worked may not work anymore. What got me here may not get me there. chances are it won't get you there. So how do you have to adjust? How do you have to change and grow? Okay, so that was a very fast, accelerated presentation of leading adaptively with help and agility and learning to manage. So hopefully there's some good insights here that you can riff off of and develop yourself. Okay, Priscilla, I am done. I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thank you, Jeff, for the wonderful presentation as always.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Really great, thank you. For folks on the call, you're welcome to type in your questions in the chat or unmute yourself and ask the question of Jeff. For now, Jeff, we have a few comments that come in. Thank you so much. This was very helpful. Great suggestions on how to lead. And Janice says, shared with us some great comments. To keep anxiety at bay, I sat down and thought through what makes me feel better. Understanding what I can control and prepare for it is important. This means for me, regular hours, exercise regularly, especially when stressed. Taking continuing education, including Zoom classes, attend job search groups, use my expertise to help others. I won't stay on the call all the time, but limit calls so that I have time for myself. I forward info onto others that might help them. Jeff, do you have a reflection to Janice's reflection?
Yeah, I do, absolutely. It's going to take about 30 minutes to get through this. I'm just joking because we only have like a few minutes left. A couple of things that were said on the front end of the question, at least that I heard. Recognizing the anxiety, and then what do you do about it? There's a lot of good emphasis on what you do about it. It was Janice, right, Priscilla?
Correct.
Excuse me. So Janice had some great ideas for what to do to mitigate anxiety or address it. Really important that we know what to do with anxiety, with stress. Oftentimes we can feel it, we can know it. It's like, oh, it's there, but we don't do anything about it. We just kind of let it fester. It just sits there somewhere. So Janice, great ideas on that. I would say to all of you, you need Janice's email so she can give you those insights and thoughts. The one thing I would add is it's important to understand what to do with anxiety or stress, but it's also important to know why it's there. Why it's there, why it's present. We don't do enough of that good work. I want to get away from the stress. I want to get away from the anxiety. Turn me loose on a mountain. Let me go do some jogging or whatever. But I think it's also really critical to understand what's generating that stress, what's generating the fear. I mean, I need to look at that. I need to understand that as best I can. And I may not be able to understand it. It may be complex. But understanding what's generating my fear, understanding what's generating my anxiety will then help me kind of address what's there. And as Jenna said, take some steps to do something about it. So that's only what I would add there, Priscilla. Janice, great question, by the way. Great thoughts. Yeah, great strategies.
We have a couple other comments in the chat from Sharon. A comment she shares, decide if what we are doing is something valuable in the new normal. Is there something that can be done better or be eliminated? Are there others who could benefit from what we now know or do?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look, Sharon, this is the nature of the community we're talking about, right? So the perspective, at least that I had, is if I'm going through experiences, I learn how to navigate them. And there's been a lot of self-insight that I've gained through that. I want to be able to give that away. I want to be able to share that. This webinar here is just a great example of Golden Gate University's attempt to reach out and share what it knows. That's fantastic. So it's one thing, Sharon, for you to learn and for you to get insights on what you experience. That's great. We need to be there. I want to be there with you in terms of that learning process. But if I can find a way to share that, and I do, every day I do in different ways with people in my neighborhood, when I'm consulting, when I'm teaching, it's just all good. So I just think taking care of others, taking advantage of opportunities to share that information, putting yourself in a position where maybe some insights and perspectives you've had over the months really are going to pay some dividends to others who maybe are in that position where they need to hear or could listen finally. By the way, seasons of disruption and change like this can open people up in a way they've never been opened before. I mean, they may be tough, strong-willed, determined, closed people. But when that VUCA impact is significant enough, people will begin to open up. And it may be that they're going to open up with you by asking a question. You're going to hear it, you're going to see it. And when that happens, just in the daily interaction with people, no matter what the situation is, environment, organization, home, when those opportunities make themselves available, we need to be able to be there in a way that's not invasive. Remember that. We need to honor boundaries, but if we can share what we've gained, what we've learned, still not perfect, still struggling, moving forward, but if we can shed some light on how our experience might be common in some ways, wow, what a gift that is. Yeah, thanks, Sharon.
Thanks, Jeff. We have 3 questions coming up. Denise, you're up.
Hi, Jeff. Thanks for the presentation today.
You bet.
My question, I've been doing virtual wellness checks with my department just to make sure that everybody is doing well, because we've been pushing out a lot of training and information about wellness and about how to telework. But my question now is I've had a couple of difficult conversations regarding budget cuts and possible layoffs.
Yeah.
And in your presentation today, you gave a lot of suggestions about how to prep and prepare and how to start the conversation. But for me, finishing is always really important.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so do you have any suggestions about how to end and leave it open for continued feedback and also...
Great stuff. Great. Great questions. You know, we're out of time. We got to go. Sorry. No, that's not true. Those are tough issues to deal with. Are you kidding me? So if we're going to take a adaptive leadership posture on this one, I think we should.
Okay.
When you're doing the wellness checks, being honest with your team on, you know, this is where we are. This is why we're here. Remember that adaptive methodology really moves the manager into a position of transparency and honesty. You know, you're acknowledging the struggle. You're acknowledging the realities. It's harsh. Some of it's tough. Maybe all of it's tough. And you're going to expect resistance. You're going to expect pushback. And you need to work with that pushback. I don't mean soften your position. Facts are facts. Layoffs are layoffs. Budget reductions are budget reductions. You can't soften that. It is what it is. But you can stay with people in their stress about that. And the resistance, remember this, the resistance and fear is often just generated by this anxiety of the unknown. And so that honest acknowledgement of this is hard. I know it's tough. It's tough for me. And to have that not be a patronizing thing that you would say, but heartfelt, that's a difference maker. So you stay with people all the way to the end. And so how do you close? Sometimes you just got to close with tough information. You might say to me, Jeff, I've got no solutions here. You know, we're all working on this together. I know it's hard for all of us, man. I just don't know how we're going to get through this, but we've got to. I can't tell you more than what I know. And I'm stressed. I'm anxious about my own job. I'm anxious about the survival of the organization. But, you know, I'm committed to finding a way forward. And if you could be in that with me, that'd be good. It's just hang in there. We'll move through this. All right. I'll give you as much information as I can as it becomes available to me. And I just want to acknowledge, not easy. That sometimes you just got to end right there.
Thank you.
Yeah. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Jeff. We have JP in the chat. In the Bay Area, so many successful ideas and organizations over the decades have thrived because they have intentionally created disruption or some kind of disequilibrium, like Uber, Lyft, you name it, in the space of innovation and novel ideas. More than anywhere else, San Francisco has seemed to always focus on the future. The anxious energy we have now is best placed trying to figure out a new feature. Do you agree? And if you so, how would you suggest that we channel this anxious energy?
Spoken like a true entrepreneur. Wow. Great question, man. Well, there's anxious energy, intelligent anxious energy, cultivated anxious energy, focused anxious energy that can generate solutions. Now, an entrepreneur obviously is going to have better parlance than this, but I know that in entrepreneurship, you've got someone who has an eye for understanding the customer, understanding the anxiety, the need, right? The passion that understands the need, that then funnels into generating of ideas, that whole creative ideology process, right? Now, that's complex. So just quickly, I would shift to, how do you do that with this? Tell me that. Woo! I'm not too sure I can answer that question yet. Because I think that the issues, the challenges are more global than just trying to find out what a customer needs in the Bay Area or maybe in California. And there may be something that emerges out of this, right? That the way antibodies are collected, or maybe more on the medical side, lots of solutions. I mean, we're learning every day on how we could be better prepared, certainly, right? With masks and gowns, to name a few things. This learning, we can accelerate in a variety of ways. Low-hanging fruit, maybe that is. But the larger anxious generating experiences that are well beyond anybody's control to understand, what are the opportunities there? I don't know. Other than continuing to create a Zoom platform, a Zoom-like platform, other opportunities to bring people together. If we know what mitigates anxiety, if we know that reduces stress, if we know what reduces stress in a way that helps us cope, is there an app for that? Yeah. Is there an opportunity? Is there a way of moving people together? Is there a way of giving people access to healthcare and therapy? Yeah. And those all come out of the apps like that, and other opportunities emerge out of periods of disruption. It's the disrupting that provides the idea. Now you're gonna have to go sleuth for that idea. You're gonna have to go look for it. It's not gonna present itself to you. Say, here's the idea. But in seasons of disruption, there are opportunities. And as an entrepreneur, you're probably thinking about that all the time. Where's the opportunity? Where's the opportunity? And I think that's a gift you bring to all of us. Sometimes I think because this is a VUCA environment, more unknown, we might have to wait a bit longer to see something emerge in a way that we can grab that and build it.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And thank you everyone for your brilliant questions. We are at time. There is a link to a feedback survey in the chat. If you don't mind letting us know about what did you enjoy most about today's webinar? If you have any suggestions on future webinars, a recording of today's event will be emailed to you next week. And we'll also email you the link to the survey should you not be able to find it in the chat. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. And we hope to continue to grow our GGU community with GGU Presents and more. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. It was great. Appreciate it.